This time last year, South Africa data pointed towards a recession. The country had contracted minus 0.6% in the first quarter, and all pointed towards a second quarter contraction. The country missed it and reported a 0.6% growth. Attempts to support the economy, it seems, have not borne fruit, and recession fears are back on economists' lips. This is Global Business as we bring you insights of Africa's ever-changing business landscape. I am Penina Kariba, live in the Kenyan capital, Nairobi. Also coming up tonight, we'll be live in Cape Town with the latest from the World Economic Forum on Africa. And Moroccan shoemakers impress European and American markets. South Africa hosts the World Economic Forum in Cape Town as its domestic economy continues to face mounting challenges. Africa's most advanced economy is waning under ongoing power shortages from ailing state utility Eskom, rising unemployment, and fears of further wage labor disputes. The economy grew a mere 1.3% in the first 3 months of this year, while unemployment rose a further 2%. Escalating consumer prices are tipped to increase even further as the Reserve Bank mulls a possible interest rate hike later this year. The nation is also dangerously close to losing its investment status, with further ratings downgrades on the horizon. International ratings agencies are calling on the government to implement wide-ranging economic reforms. Right, let's get more now from Sumitra Naidu. She's live for us from Johannesburg. So, Sumitra, the cash-strapped state utility Eskom is applying for further tariff hikes. This comes on top of the 12.6% price increase introduced this year. What effect would further price rises have on the day-to-day operations of local businesses?
Well, Penina, further increases basically means higher input costs for business. Electricity makes up the biggest chunk of input costs when you look at big industry, mining, manufacturing, the motor industry. These are energy-intensive industries, and many of these businesses have had to spend heavily on alternative energy sources to limit productivity downtime whenever Eskom carries out its controlled power cuts in order to maintain supply on the national grid. Now, adding to this is the increase in transport costs. These have also risen on the back of 3 fuel hikes that we've had this year so far. And if you look at smaller business that don't have the spare capacity to actually invest in alternative energy sources, they're closing shop during those power cuts. Many are unable to sustain their businesses. Some of these cuts stretch out for up to 4 hours at a time. Now, if you add steep hikes in electricity, many are asking themselves, is it worth it? Or is this environment conducive to actually do business? This also plays on the unemployment problem that we have in this country. Unemployment has shot up a further 2%. We're now sitting at over 26%. Businesses are closing shop because they can't keep up with all of these electricity price hikes, alongside all of the other hikes that we're seeing coming through in the economy.
So, Mitra, let's talk about the point you raised about doing business in South Africa. The nation came close to losing its investment-grade credit rating last month. Are there fears international investors may be scared of? I mean, what are their major concerns?
Well, we're seeing that fear play out in the market. The rand has been coming under pressure and slumped a further 2% this evening ahead of a ratings review and possible decision, a possible downgrade by Fitch tomorrow. Now, the unit is currently trading at 12.38 against the dollar. It's just a touch away from 19 against the pound. It's close to a 3-month low against the greenback. Now, these warnings from the ratings agencies have been around for a while, and analysts say that South Africa's failure or lack of initiative or urgency, if you would call it that, in dealing with these issues, in trying to correct them, has left investors less confident. Growth has been revised lower to just 2% for 2015, but economists say it's unlikely South Africa will reach that. Earlier this year, Fitch, the ratings agency, cautioned South Africa over its reliance on offshore portfolio inflows as this reliance exposes the external accounts to changes in investor sentiment. It also warned that South Africa has had persistent high twin budget and current account deficits alongside low growth. Now, similar warnings came from Moody's and from Standard & Poor's over the country's high debt levels. It seems investors are really concerned with South Africa's ability to turn the situation around.
And Sumitra, some economists have called on the government to fast-track the implementation of the National Development Plan. How does it aim to repair the economy?
Well, this is another area that the ratings agencies are concerned about. They do believe that the National Development Plan is a good policy, but one that needs to be implemented urgently. So this plan really sets out a strategy that will see further investment in infrastructure and manufacturing and create value chains across different industries that will reduce the unemployment rate and create new jobs for the youth, really get this economy going again. However, government is now spending more on social development. Its public sector wage bill is ballooning. The recent wage increases that it agreed to will add a further $6 billion to its expenses. And much of this plan still needs to be implemented. So it's really about implementation of this policy. It's a long-term plan, but we're not really seeing any of the benefits short-term. And some are growing concerned that we may not even see the benefits long-term.
All right, great insights there, Sumitra Naidu, live for us in Johannesburg. Now, more than 1,000 political and industry leaders held wide-ranging discussions on business and development in Africa as the World Economic Forum finished its second day. While the forum, in its 25th year, has often been criticized as a meeting place for wealthy elites, organizers say the event provides a real catalyst for positive economic and social change.
A major focus of this year's forum is how far the continent has progressed since the event's inception a quarter of a century ago. However, the forum comes after a spate of xenophobic violence in South Africa in April, which killed at least 7 people and hurt the reputation of Africa's most advanced economy. South African business leaders say African nations must look past differences and work together.
Xenophobia, South Africa in particular, our future is inextricably intertwined with the future of the continent. We have to be a country that welcomes and creates a dispensation that allows all Africans and people from all over the world to do well. The best economies in the world have grown on the back of creating an environment that is tolerant and also accommodating.
Critics of the WEF say it's an expensive gathering of the rich, out of touch with most of Africa's population. Organisers disagree, pointing to the role the forum has played in developing the continent's economies.
Being together for 2 or 3 days, don't underestimate the power of having these people meet and talk, exchange ideas, create new projects and concepts to drive things forward. Africa has done well. The continent has grown consistently for about 5%, and frankly it needs to grow to the 5, 6, 7% if we really want to get where Pumsili is, give everybody a chance and develop everybody. And so the growth is actually to some extent encouraging compared to the rest of the world, but it is below what we need if we want to lift the people out of poverty.
The economic potential of mobile telecommunications was also a key theme. Chinese telecommunication companies are making major inroads within the African market.
If the population is there, it means the opportunities are there. Yeah. So look at the whole Africa continent. Sure, South Africa still, is the most, growing fast area, and also like in West Africa, Nigeria, yeah, and also in the north, right, Egypt, and also in the East Africa, Kenya. Yeah, and another countries will also pay more attention. One is Angola. In the past around 15 years, the GDP growth of Angola is quite well.
Delegates will continue discussing wide-ranging issues within Africa's economy on the third and final day of the forum. Andrew Thompson, CCTV.
Now, science, technology, math and engineering students got a kickstart with a $25 million commitment to the African Institute for Mathematical Sciences, AIMS. The money comes from the MasterCard Foundation and is spread over 5 years. Some 3,000 math and science teachers across the continent are expected to benefit, as Angela Kupla reports.
It's a significant investment in anybody's books, and it will be put to good use.
The involvement of MasterCard is crucial because this partnership program is designed to address the education and skills gap that Africa is experiencing.
We got involved with AIMS because we're interested in education in Africa. That's one of our two main areas. The other is economic inclusion. Our goal in supporting AIMS is to support an organization committed to bringing STEM education to Africa.
There's a good business case to be made for partnering with AIMS, says its CEO.
We want to reach out to businesses. We are training young, bright African mathematicians who have skills that businesses, the private sector need to sustain their growth.
Our hope is to support the training of 3,000 teachers who will be the source of inspiration and support for the next generation of STEM educated young people in Africa.
There's no question that the critical shortages in the sciences and the mathematics in terms of students, academia and people who go into business is impeding the growth and development of the African continent. And this investment in the future will make a difference, but it's only a start. I'm Angelo Coppola for CCTV in Cape Town.
Let's now cross over to Beatrice Marshall in Cape Town, South Africa, for the latest on Africa's Davos Forum. Beatrice, we gather that the weight of rising debt on African economies was quite an issue in Thursday's discussions. What else came up?
Well, Penina, yes, industrialization was a key focus today at the World Economic Forum on Africa. Delegates spent the better part of the afternoon here today discussing Africa's industrialization. Exactly what is frustrating Africa's industrialization? Can Africa industrialize? And when and by how long? Well, South Africa is described as the continent's most advanced economy. Angelo Coppola is here with me. He's been following all the discussions here the whole day at the World Economic Forum on Africa. South Africa is Africa's most advanced economy here. What is South Africa's issues with industrialization? How does South Africa plan to look at this whole question of industrialization?
Well, at the moment, the two big issues are really electricity, and we've got the Black Industrialists program, which the DTI has been driving, and it's also been driven by the Black Business Council. They're trying to create 100 black industrialists. They pumped in the region of about 40 billion rand, or about $4 billion, into this program over the next 10 years. There's some people who are suggesting that that is a bit of a big wad of cash that's going into that space because it's only aimed at 100 people. But the spin-off and the cascading effect down is hoping to build a downstream sort of chain of black industrialists, mini industrialists coming up and making decent amounts of cash and benefiting their communities. The issue at the moment, though, on the other side, in terms of electricity, is the fact that we don't have any consistent electricity. It's something we've been covering for a long time now.
Right.
But the upside is that for the last 7 days, thankfully, we've had no load shedding. So it seems as if Eskom, the big utility, has got this sorted out at last. But again, if one unit goes down and there's a lack of maintenance, we're going to have a problem there. So the two big issues are the black industrialists trying to find growth and then making sure that there's enough electricity to grow the economy. Because at the moment, we're only growing the economy at around 1.5% to 2%.
Well, that whole question of electricity, though, has been a sore point for South Africa. The economy has contracted largely as a result of the problems, the power shortages and the problems with the electricity generation here. What are South Africa's experiences, though, on that front? Because that is a key component to industrialize.
Well, the issue is people don't know when the power is going to cut. So they'll be watching the load shedding program and they'll sort of make allowance for it. And what happens, though, is the power will drop while they're in the middle of a manufacturing cycle. So that equipment that they're using to run their processes stops. And anything that's in that actual process at the time also stops, which means they have to destroy it and get rid of it, clean the machines out when the power comes back on again. It also is a resource planning issue here because you're telling staff, don't come to work at that time or take lunch early or whatever it might be, and because we're expecting a power out. And then there's no power out. And there's a lack of resource planning. So not only are you not manufacturing, but you're having to run staff in different manners. So it's very inefficient, and business want consistency. They need that consistency so they can actually produce stuff.
All right, infrastructure development and financing infrastructure is going to be another issue that will be discussed tomorrow. Infrastructure as well, a key component of industrialization for African economies. What is South Africa's experience on this, and what exactly is South Africa investing in its infrastructural development?
Well, the issue around infrastructure now has gone beyond roads and rail, because it's now about the small communities that haven't been reached by water supply, sanitation, and basic healthcare. And healthcare was one of the issues that was discussed today as well. So that has to happen, because there are rural communities that are still not covered. The government makes a big spiel about the fact that they're reaching so many more millions of people than they did 20 years ago. They are. But those communities that haven't got those basic infrastructure needs are shouting louder. Service delivery protests we're hearing, it's because they don't have the access, because they're seeing their neighbors with access. There is an issue around infrastructure which is quite interesting. SADC have now come out and said we need to have inter-rail operability, which means that the railway lines that stop at the border at South Africa are the same gauge when they get into Mozambique.
Right.
Because otherwise you're going to have a problem. You'll have to bring the train there, change tracks, and use another train to move it from there, which makes it inefficient. So there's talk of making the rail networks the same gauge so that people can actually move their goods backwards and forwards without having to go through that whole process.
Just going back very briefly, though, Angelo, to the whole question of the power outages and electricity. And a point came up today, though, that the reason South Africa's population has risen up against the electricity power cuts is because South Africa actually has 90% penetration of electricity to the rural areas. What's your thoughts on that?
There is power to 90%. Yes, definitely. The issue again is if I don't have electricity and my neighbor does, I'm going to make a noise about it. So that 10% are making a lot of noise because they're expecting to get what the government has promised them: houses, sanitation, electricity, and basic human rights that you're entitled to. So the small group that don't have are making a lot of noise about it. The majority, and quite rightly so, have these facilities or these utilities that we need and that we demand as a basic human right.
Right.
So they're quiet and they're happy about it. It's the 10% that are making quite a lot of noise, and government's making that point very regularly and often.
All right, Angelo Coppola, we'll leave it there. Angelo Coppola has been following all the discussions here for you at the World Economic Forum on Africa. We'll return tomorrow. Financing Africa's infrastructure, a big issue on the agenda, as well as powering Africa. We'll bring you all that here live from the World Economic Forum on Africa. Penina?
And we'll be looking forward to that, Beatrice. Thanks very much for joining us, Beatrice Marshall and the team in Cape Town. Well, let's turn our attention now to the market. And we saw a splash of red right across all the four main indices that we track here in Global Business. Coming up, Africa's richest man, Aliko Dangote, is not about to slow down on investing in the continent. We're one-on-one with him next. And a taste of one of South Africa's biggest wine and oyster festivals.
This is the first year that Africa will have more foreign direct investment than aid. And it's like the tipping point in terms of changing the way the continent is perceived. And I think this summit very much responds to that call. Now, whether it can materialize what is being announced is something that we'll have to check and see whether it happens.
You're watching Global Business. Welcome back. Africa's richest businessman, Nigeria's Aliko Dangote, says he's committed to making further large-scale investments in the continent. The Dangote Group has opened a $500 million cement plant in Ethiopia as part of expansion plans across Africa. He told CCTV's Grim Chala that he's determined to create more employment opportunities for his fellow Africans.
Thank you very much, Mr. Dangote, and congratulations for this huge success. Here in Ethiopia, you have just opened your new cement factory with more than $500 million investment. What does this mean to you as an investor from Africa investing within Africa?
Well, it means quite a lot. It's great to see us being Africans investing in our own continent, building our own continent. I think the significance of this investment is an investment by an African in Africa. And we'll continue to do so, you know, to make sure that we don't wait for the foreigners to come and grow and also invest in Africa. We have to lead, and that's what we are doing at the moment.
With the rapid expansion of your investments across the continent, what can we expect in the near future?
We are going to invest heavily. Even now we are working about investing in the areas of phosphate and other areas, in agriculture, but we are doubling the plan to start with. And we'll keep investing here, this is as good as home. It's home to us.
Chinese companies have majorly participated in the construction of this new cement factory here in Ethiopia. So how do you express your collaboration with the Chinese companies so far and perhaps in the future?
It's a good collaboration, they build faster, they are very committed, and, they are partners in progress.
While companies are growing, companies like yours and investment opportunities are being created, Africa needs lots of job opportunities for its citizens. How are you going to contribute in providing jobs for Africans?
Mainly in agricultural side, we are providing huge number of jobs. And we want to replicate that. After doing it in Nigeria, we'll replicate it all over Africa.
Now, the grey, slimy and often eaten roe doesn't sound too appetizing. Oysters, however, are an expensive delicacy in high demand amongst discerning food lovers around the world. South Africa's oyster farming sector is benefiting from growing demand for this unique tasting shellfish. Sumitra Naidu attended one of the nation's biggest wine and oyster festivals to take a closer look at the industry.
Hundreds of seafood lovers made their way to Johannesburg's Monte Casino to get a taste of some of the best oysters on offer. With 85,000 oysters shipped in from Port Elizabeth, there was plenty for everyone. But these little exotic delicacies are not your everyday dish. They're expensive and more for those with an acquired taste.
Of the taste. I just love the taste, and it reminds me of the sea. And I don't like to swallow it. I like to chew it a bit before. People say you must just swallow it. I must taste it. I love to taste it.
I've been eating it for the last 10 years, and they're actually quite interesting because I've eaten baked oysters before, and I've loved it ever since.
Some, curious, decided to give it a try.
I've never tasted this funny type of food, so I'm gonna try it now. Ne? How do I do it? I don't know how. I'm gonna try. Ne? Like must have been very nice. Fresh.
So there's no preparation involved. The perfect oyster is best eaten fresh out of the ocean. But they do take a considerable amount of time before they're ready.
We grow them from sort of 2 or 3 millimeters all the way through to probably about 6 or 7 centimeters long. It takes about 8 or 9 months. And during that time, they'll be graded. And when they get to the right size, we'll then put them, we take the live oyster, we put it into a truck it down to South Africa, where we will put them out to sea immediately as they arrive. And they'll spend probably another 2 or 3 months out at sea. You've got to get your oyster loose.
Reduced for the festival at just over $1 an oyster, fans of the delicacy delighted in the treat.
South Africans consume between 3 and 5 million oysters annually. And if you're wondering why they're so expensive, oysters have an extremely high mortality rate. Out of every farming season, only between 30 and 40% of all oysters are harvested alive.
The South African oyster industry is valued at an estimated $40 million. 279 tons of oysters are produced annually, roughly 7% of all seafood trade.
With insatiable demand for oysters, especially in Asia, the export industry is set for further growth.
From an export point of view, there's a massive demand of oysters internationally.
Where are you
in the east, so Hong Kong, Thailand, they love their oysters.
Domestic demand for oysters is also showing steady growth as younger, more affluent South Africans are developing a taste for the finer things in life. Sumitra Nadu, CCTV, Johannesburg.
All right, let's quickly look at commodity prices. And crude oil prices fall more than $1 on Thursday as investors prepared for a widely expected decision by OPEC members to maintain current production levels despite worries of a global supply glut. The Organization of the Petroleum Exporting Countries is expected on Friday to keep a group output target of 30 million barrels per day, ignoring calls from some producers to cut supply to support prices. The cartel is now pumping about 2 million barrels per day. That's more than needed. And analysts are saying this is feeding a glut that has left millions of barrels in storage and kept prices at close to half their peak levels last year. Right, let's go to Morocco, which is famed for its argan oil and saffron production, but it's also known for its raffia shoemakers who create a chic summer shoe destined for European and American stores. Here's Clementine Logan with more.
Skilled artisans spend hours carefully weaving raffia fibres imported from Madagascar to produce these shoes. They're traditionally made in 3 Moroccan cities, Salé, Mohamedia and Essaouira, and they're crafted mainly by women. On average, it takes 1 day to weave a pair of shoes, but a more intricate design could take up to 3 days to be finished. Yusuf El Hor, one of the designers, says the shoes are also good for the feet as they're soft and malleable.
Raffia is a natural product with no artificial elements. It is recommended by doctors because it does not harm the feet.
Workshops in Essaouira also receive many requests from abroad.
There's a big demand and we receive a lot of orders from big stores and fashion houses. They give us the models they want and we manufacture it for them. We have clients from France, Italy and Australia. We work with many countries.
The raffia shoes are being showcased in this year's spring-summer collection by renowned designers Dolce & Gabbana and Gucci. The price tag of the luxury designer shoes ranges from $100 to $600 US. Here in Morocco, though, shoppers can snap up a pair for around a quarter of the price. Clementine Logan, CCTV.
Let's briefly run through the currencies. In Egypt's central bank kept the pound's exchange rate steady at 7.53 to the US dollar. At a foreign exchange auction on Thursday, black market rates are also largely stable. The central bank has held the official exchange rate unchanged for 4 months since letting the pound weaken at the beginning of this year. This weakening and other measures have helped reduce black market trading. On Global Business tomorrow, curtains fall on the World Economic Forum for Africa in Cape Town, South Africa. We'll have the concluding remarks. We'll also be looking at the effect an embargo on animal trophies is having on South Africa's hunting industry. And that's it on Global Business for now. To send your feedback to Global Business Africa at cctv.com. You can visit our Facebook page, CCTV Africa, and you can also stay in touch with Global Business on Twitter using the handle at CCTV News Africa. I am Penina Karibe. Thanks for your company.